Hello, everybody. It's Katrina Pitts from Studio in financial coach to small business owners. And I want to welcome you to another episode of More Minutes, our podcast here that starts talking about personal finance things or business topics. And sometimes I'll have guests. Today, you just have me, but hopefully it's insightful and helpful and maybe funny, entertaining along the way. But there's little tidbits that you can take along and implement those in your personal finances or your business, or things that you can think about and see if you want to implement them in your business. But today I want to kind of go back in the way back machine with you all because I went into that yesterday. I was going through some of the pictures that are in my downloads folder on my computer in my office, and lots of things from I don't know, reports that I had downloaded or pictures from trips that I downloaded, but I came across a picture that I had taken of a financial house that my dad and I built probably 7 or 8 years ago, maybe even more than that at this point, maybe closer to 8 or 9 years ago. When I started on my own personal financial literacy journey in the sense of doing it as a volunteer in the community for a nonprofit here in my local city. And my bright idea at the time was, we're going to talk about these different personal finance topics, but I'm a visual person and an engagement person. And so what I did is kind of looked at the curriculum, but I asked my dad, I said, "Hey Dad, would you be willing to help me build a house?" And I went to Home Depot and bought the, materials for the walls and for the floor and for the roof. And when looking at the picture right now, it doesn't look anything like an actual house that anybody would actually live in, but the point is well taken. And so Dad said, "Sure, I'll help you build it." And, so we, measured everything out and, took the saw and all the different things and made it work and painted it and put labels on it and such. And when I went to the first class, this was my way of starting to get people to thinking about how their different aspects of their personal finance come together in a very unique and personal and organized kind of a way to give a full picture. It's not just one, this part or that part. It's all of these things having to work together. And so we kind of went through defining this, defining that, and then, I have this Matlet that you'll see here in the picture. We'll talk through each of these here individually, but kind of getting people and drawing them out into conversation about aspects of personal finance. So if you'll indulge me today, I'm going to go back, like I said, in the Wayback Machine and kind of take you through my thought process of when we put this house together. And unfortunately, I don't have the actual house anymore. And thank goodness I took pictures of it because it would have been a memory, that just would live in my head and not actually, in pictures. But let's start with the bottom. And it's in purple, if I can see that correctly. It's in purple. And for every house, and we all know this, there's a foundation, there's walls, and there's a roof. Those are the main components, right? You have, internal walls for all the rooms and supports, all those different things. And you have, beams for the roof. Sometimes they're exposed depending on the aesthetic you're going for. And, you have foundation, pier and beam, or concrete, or, slabs, or whatever. There's a variety of things that you do. But the main components are a foundation, walls, support beams, and a roof. And so the logic behind this, and we're going to start with the spending plan or the budget, is the foundational piece to this. And there's many different ways and methods that people use to budget for their household. Some don't. That's also a method. They're the method of not doing it all, but some choose different percentages. Some use values to drive their spending habits. Some use, it comes in and it goes out and goes to various places. Some use envelopes. You can also use, split it out into different bank accounts. I know people who do this where they have a bank account for clothing, a bank account for travel, a separate one for any sort of charitable giving that they do, so that they kind of know where all of their buckets lie and how much money is in each one. So main operating that just kind of pushes funds to other places for other things. And maybe they have an associated debit card for those, or when it comes out, they just sort of calculate that way. But there's a myriad of ways that people can manage their personal finances, but we usually call it a budget or spending plan, which at its core means that you are tracking or following and calculating the money that you have coming in, whether that's from a W-2 job, if you're building your business, owners draw from the business, or if you have side hustle, so 1099s, you're doing sort of freelance work, you're not an employee, but you have specific projects that you work on. So however it is that you are paid, full-time, part-time, some of the time, you have that money coming in. And then you have to answer the question of, okay, well, where's that money going, right? And so, groceries, an electric bill, and different subscriptions for entertainment or for work that you have, memberships that you have to gyms, or memberships for different credentialing and organizations that you're a part of, or you could, gas and insurance and, your student loans and credit cards, all these different things, right? Kind of line item, line item, line item. Or maybe you have it broken out into, income, and maybe you have charitable giving, as a major part of yours if you're kind of value driven for yours. And then you have whatever your fixed expenses are. And then you have what your variable expenses are. So fixed things like your rent, your mortgage, um, utilities, things that have a due date. That's how I think about it. Fixed. They have a due date to them. So it's already marked on your calendar, or it's going to be withdrawn from your bank account on a certain day. They're kind of non-negotiables, right? And then you have your variable ones. Gas. It could be different every single month, or groceries. You kind of know generally, but you have some room in there. It's not a hard day. You must purchase groceries on the 15th and you must purchase them on the 20th. You get to manage that throughout the month, however you choose. So you may have it, kind of structured that way in your budget, and you're kind of tracking and following. But there's two sides to this. The first side is what you think you're going to spend, right? And some of that can be based on historical evidence of, you go back in prior year, same month. So we're in January 2026. So I'll give you a personal example. So when I was putting together my budget for January 2026, and to full transparency, I start this planning process in October. I'm going to be that honest with you. When I'm getting ready to turn into a new year, I start looking at those things in around October. So I started fleshing out the 2026 budget in January. I went back to January 2024 and 2025 to see what I had spent, what I spent on groceries. And I think if you all have been with me any number of months, you know that I made some pretty significant changes in how I spend money in my groceries. And so where am I relative to those changes, and what do I want to carry forward in my January budget? What major expenditures do I have that are annual that I need to carry forward in this budget as well that hit in January? So I had to pull those forward as well and put a line item in there, because I want to make sure that I allocate the correct amount of resources and funds for that, but also checking on that account for that particular vendor to make sure that I even have the right amount, correct? Because it could have gone up in a year. And if I missed the notification in my email, I want to make sure that I account for it correctly. So that if I've budgeted 150, but it's now up to 180, well, that's a $30 shortfall that I'm going to have to figure out. Now, will that hurt me one way or the other? I don't know. It depends on what the other things that I have going on in my budget as to whether that's a material difference or not. $30, I'll feel that, or I'll notice it. $30, it's still $30. I can do other things with it, but you kind of project it out. This is what I think. Utilities was kind of this, groceries was kind of this. You kind of have rough numbers for it, right? If you're like me, you're very detailed and you're in the numbers, but some people take a much more high level approach to it. They have this bucket for that, and then whatever's left over, they spend, because their spending habits are not too outrageous, or they don't have major spending issues, or they're racking up considerable credit card debt and doing those different things. So their habits are pretty stable. So really, they're kind of looking at high-level things that are fixed, and then whatever's left over, they spend it however they want to. That's fine as well. So then as you roll through the month, this is the other side. So you've made the plan, right? This is what I think is going to happen, where I know I get my paychecks, what's going to be coming out of this first paycheck or second paycheck, or if you're a dual income family, and you get paid ostensibly 4 times a month. They might be on the exact same days, but you're being paid at 4 intervals, two on the 15th and 2 on the 30th, and you're kind of managing those in between days. I know they're coming in, or you get paid every Friday. I think I have another prior podcast where you can kind of look at a calendar and look at, start plugging in numbers to see where the income comes in, and then what are the expenses throughout the rest of the month, and how are you going to manage the discretionary piece of that. But the point is, you have your knowns, right? Your knowns, whether they are fixed amounts every single month, a la lease and mortgage and your car payment, and maybe student loans, or you have they're fixed in the sense that they have a fixed date. The amount might change based on seasons or such, or they're fixed because they're subscriptions, and then you have your discretionary. So however you've planned it out, then you have to go back and see and true it up and see how close you were to your projections. Okay, we budgeted $1,000 for groceries, but we only spent 750 because we did a lot of grocery shopping in January, and maybe January last year was, oh right, it was a birthday party for, a kid who was in my kid's class, but not in my kid's class this year, so we don't have to really worry about it because we were, planning a party for their school, and so we were in charge of, the party favors and such, and so we spent a lot more on that one. But it doesn't apply this year, right? So you saved $300 and it wasn't a part of it last year. And so, okay, truing it up. How close were my projection? How much money do I have left over? What do I want to do with that leftover money? Even if it's $5 is still more than zero and a lot more than negative. So what do I do with that? Do I put that in savings? Do I put that towards, extra $5 towards paying down a credit card? Do I pay the extra $5 on, some other thing that has, a balance that's due on it? Whatever. Or do I just roll it over to the next month because it's $5 and it will go towards something else? You get to choose that. But the spending plan is kind of how you are monitoring inflow and outgo of your resources and predetermining where you want them to go, especially as we get to these other categories that we're going to talk about here in terms of the walls. They all fit into and feed into how you build your spending plan and what you are choosing to accomplish with those resources. So let's go to the next part. So that's the spending plan, the foundation. That is the base part that we're working with. So let's look at the different walls that we have going up, or different support beams that we have going up. So let's look at the red one. We have, well, I'll just name them off. We have red, which is savings; blue, which is investing; we have green, which is communications; and then we have yellow, which is credit and debt. So each of these go into our budget, and I will get to the communication one because you're probably looking at me like, what does that have to do with anything? It's not a number, but it's very, very important. So savings. Let's just take these all kind of as a group. Savings. What are we actually? Why are we saving? And you've probably heard me say this many times. Why? I am more me as a financial coach, and my approach to this, and people have different approaches, and that's 100% fine. But for me, my priorities, let me put it this way. My priority one is, do you know why you're saving? And my priority two is, are you at least in the habit of saving? Because if we have those two things together, we know what we're saving for, and we have a habit of saving, or we are developing that habit of saving, we can apply that to any dollar amount and any goal that we want to. We know why we're doing it, and we're building a habit of doing it, and so we can apply that to saving for an education, saving for a vacation, saving for a new car, saving for a fun, new bedroom suit, saving for this really cool electronic piece that I really, really want, or electronic device, it's a word, that I really, really want, and it's going to be amazing, but it's 4 figures, so saving for that. Right, again, it doesn't matter. My point is, the thing that you're saving for doesn't matter. The thing to me that's more important is, why are we doing this? And are we building a habit of saving? So $5 turns into $10, turns into 15, turns into 20, turns into 100, turns into 500, turns into 1,000, and we've met our goal. So savings, but how does that feed into our spending plan or our budget? Which line item is it going to? Where is it going to go? Is that a separate bank account? Separate as in completely separate, so not even an easy transfer where I can go into my bank and move it from my savings to my checking and have sticky fingers, or do I have a completely separate bank account for it? And I will also tell up on myself early in my journey. I don't have this issue anymore because it's been 17 years in the making. 15, I'll hedge it, 15 years in the making, but what I used to do is I had a separate bank account for savings, and there was a debit card attached to it. I gave my parents that debit card so that I wouldn't have it in my purse. I wouldn't even have it on my person in my home, because I had sticky fingers where I would just go, oh, well, I can just use my savings account, no big deal, and just slide it. Because I got into major, major trouble with managing a checking account and a credit card, because my sticky fingers kept using credit card and debit card, and then ultimately overdrawn on my bank account and overspent on my credit card, to the point where both of them were declined when I went to go buy cookies in the food court at a mall that I was working at. So we've come a long way to where I can manage those things. I can have all the cards in my house and not have an issue with it whatsoever. But it took a while to get there, right? That was a muscle, a financial muscle that I had to find first, locate. Where is that muscle even in my financial body? But then also then develop it and be diligent with developing it to the point where I'm good. I don't even need you all to handle that because I've got this. But if that is you, go for it. Just be self-aware, know where you are, and you can monitor it and moderate it from there and grow and develop to the point where you don't even have to have a governor anymore. You are perfectly capable of managing that well and responsibly. But my point is the savings. How does that fit into the spending plan? Where's the line item? Where is it going to go? How are you going to manage that? How much is it? What's the regularity of it? Is it twice a month? So you want to save $50 a month, 25 from this paycheck, 25 from that paycheck. Boom, we got it, and we move on. So there are ways that we need to manage that and make sure that we put that in the spending plan. The same thing for the investment. Now, some of this is going to be pre-tax. That's just coming straight from your paycheck, and it never makes it to your operating account because it's a pre-tax withdrawal and deposit and contribution to your 401k or IRA or whatever. Or is it a post-tax where you're not depositing, but contributing to a Roth IRA, which is post-tax dollars, meaning it's what comes after the net amount that you get. So if your net on your paycheck is $3,000, you're taking $300 and you're investing that into your Roth IRA. Those are post-tax dollars. So it depends. Now, calculating that, right? Figuring out is a whole different, conversation, but at least kind of want to plant the seed of planning for that. What do you want to invest in, and where's that investment going to go? So is it pre-tax dollars that is being taken out of your paycheck that's directed into your employer-sponsored 401k, or it's being directed to an external retirement account that you have set up at a different brokerage in a different place, and they're siphoning it from your bank account because you've given your employer those permissions to move that money? Or is it post, right? To where you get and then whatever that contribution is, it lowers, the taxable amount for your paycheck, which means, whatever you come home with, that will adjust what your net paycheck is. Or is it post, right? To where you go, okay, I'm getting this money now, and then it's going into some other account later on. So deciding those things, because they're meaningful. It either impacts the money you have coming in, right, to the net amount, or it impacts the amount that you have going out after the money comes into your hands. But knowing that and understanding how you want that to go, put that into your spending plan. Put that in your budget, especially if it's post-tax. If it's pre-tax, just make a note that you know what's coming out. But definitely if it's post-tax, put that in there. Automatic transfer or automatic withdrawal, however you choose to do it, set that up. If my paycheck goes in on the 15th and then I want to, move it on the 19th, the paycheck goes in on the 30th and I want to move it on the 3rd, right? Because you want the funds to be there is my point. So however you choose to direct that, making sure that you put that in. So then the other one is credit and debt. So that is credit card is how I'm viewing this. So credit card debt that you have, so revolving, right, or a line of credit that you are using. So you have a bucket and an amount that you can borrow against. So you're borrowing against your credit card, you're using that money, and you're going to pay it back with interest if you don't pay off the full amount, the balance, or not. If you pay the full balance off, there is no interest applied. Or lines of credit that you have from your bank account that you're using for different things, your business or what have you. And then the debt part is, your mortgage or your student loans, your car, those kinds of things that are more fixed. They're installments. So it's the same amount, due the same time every single month you are responsible for paying. So how does that fit into it? Do you plan on paying that off? Are we paying extra on those particular ones, especially, on the credit card, paying those balances off? Or are we trying to pay ahead on our, car loan? It's a 5-year note, but we want it to be paid off in 3. So we're paying more for that. How much are we going to allocate for that? All of that information going into your spending plan. And there's a ton of calculators that are out there to help you figure out how quickly you can pay your debt off if you start paying extra on it. So that's a separate conversation that we can have. You can hit me up and I'll send you the information, and that's fine, no problem with that. Or you can do the search yourself, but I'm happy to help you. So that's the credit and debt piece, but that also goes into your spending plan. Where do you want to make modifications? Do we really want to tackle, we have 5 credit cards. We really want to reduce that down to 2. And so which are the 3 that we are going to pay off, and really having a discussion and consideration about that, which brings me to the one that's in green, the communication piece. And the communication one is actually one that is more, that's less about the dollars, but more about the honesty and the transparency about what you're doing with those dollars. And this is something I had to start with my own family. As a single person, having those conversations with my parents, but also as I got older, my parents having those conversations with me, especially about retirement for a family member, for my parent, and what that meant for my family's household income, and what they were going to do, what their budget looked like, and the impact of those choices. But having a conversation, communication, I will speak from both sides of this. If you are a single person, I encourage you, find somebody to have that conversation with. Find someone to say, hey, I'm really thinking about looking at my money a little bit differently. Can you, would you like to, kind of have a conversation about that with me? Or if you hear, or both of you are saying, man, I really wish I could do this money thing differently, or I wish there has to be a better way. Okay, how about we both help each other figure this out? That hey, what does it look like for your budget this month? Can we go to brunch? Maybe we need to pick up a sandwich and go to the park or something. Have those conversations. Start being able to talk about them in a healthy and meaningful way, instead of constantly stating, I don't have enough, I can't do this is super hard. That's not really beneficial. But having more, sure, this is hard. How can we make it easier? Or man, it feels like I'm running out of money. How can we do this easier? Is it more income, or is it, less expenses? Which side of that coin do we need to do? I would err on the side of making more, because there's only so much that you can cut from your budget and still have lights on and a place to live and transportation. But if that's where we need to start, then that's where we need to start. So I encourage you single people, it's super, super important to start having those healthy conversations, especially if you're starting out on your career journey. Start having those now so that you can build that, because as you start finding your partner to be with in life, you can start having those habits built up and bringing that into your relationship. Because the number one thing that many couples get divorced over is money issues. And at the root of that is because we didn't talk about it. It's not because we don't have the money. It's because we didn't talk about the resources that we are using in our household and do this together. So I encourage you single people. Now for the married people, and the partnered people, I also encourage you, start having those conversations. It's not that it's her fault, it's his fault. That's not helpful. Start figuring out ways to have healthy conversations. Have a weekly money date where we just talk about it. We put all the credit cards, we put all the statements, we put all the things on the table, and we say, honey, how are we going to do this? There has to be a better way. And if you need to solicit the services of a professional like a financial coach or a marriage counselor who also does financial coaching, do that. Whatever makes sense for you all to have massive, massive transformational success in your money and in your finances, you owe it to yourself to do it. So do it. That's my very directive thought for the day is do it. You will only benefit from it. And then the third one I would say is, especially if you have aging parents, and really those conversations are delicate in the sense of we don't want to burst in there as if we're the superheroes trying to save the day with their money. Dun, 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 I'm here to save the day. No one really receives that very, very well. But really engaging your aging parents on how do you want your money to be spent? How do you feel like this in retirement? If you could do anything differently, what would you have done differently with your money? If you were my age, or you were, older or changing careers, what would you have done? And they will be able to tell you things that they wish they would have done differently, or things that worked like massively, massively, massively well in their life, and sharing that information with you. Because as they get older and maybe experience challenges, and this is not the case for every aging parent, because not all the horrible things that we have come to expect are the story for every person that gets older. But if your family is getting older and having challenges, drawing them in that conversation in a loving and delicate and respectful and honoring manner, and open that you are inviting them into conversation with you, not coming in to save the day and fix everything, really will go a long way. Because I can say it went a long way with my family and working them through many, many things, up to and including, my mother's passing and even things dealing with financial things after that. So I encourage you to do that. It really does make the pathway a lot easier and smoother to start drawing them into the conversation and not siloing things off. It's my money. I'll do whatever I want to do with it. It's your money. Do whatever you want to do with it. But really having conversations about it. So that's why the communication piece, how do we want to save? What do we want to invest in? What do we want to do about our debt and credit? Having conversations, bringing it out into the open. And yes, it's going to feel awkward at first. Yes, you're going to feel nervous. You're going to feel like this is not working at all, but stick with it and give it time to develop. Give it time to take root and see the fruit and benefits of it. Give yourself 3 months. Every Friday or every Monday or twice a week, or not twice a week, but twice a month, we're having a money day. How do we do the last 2 weeks on our spending? How are we doing on our goal setting? Start dreaming. Start thinking of what you would like your life to be financially and start making a plan to do it. Again, if you have to have a professional do it with you, do whatever you need to do. Whatever works and makes sense for you and your family. But that communication piece is really what helps all those other support beams of other places of importance as they filter into your spending plan, your budget, really start making sense and bringing positive momentum for your money. And so then the last one I want to talk about is the roof that's on top. And that one says retirement planning, building a business, or buying a home. Building the business, purchasing a home. That's what that says at the top. Sorry, I'm looking at the pictures. I had to blow it up a little bit. Building the business or purchasing a home. Now, it could be building a business, it could be retiring, it could be what is that sort of, kind of highest goal that you would like to attain to, and how does that really fit into your spending plan? How does that fit into your long range goals? And really, you can think of it really as a goal that you want to accomplish or something that you would like to see done for you or for your family, right? I want to retire when I'm 50, right? There's was it financially independent, retiring early, the FIRE movement that we had, and that's still probably pretty popular, but I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do really hard things for a very short period of time, and the payoff is that I get to retire when I'm 40, 45, 50 years old. And it's amazing. So you have these next many decades to do whatever you want to do with whomever you want to do it with, however and whenever, and all the things that are amazing. So if that's for you, how does all of these things that go together, how are we going to save? How are we going to invest? How are we going to address credit and debt? Who are we going to talk to about it? What's our plan that we're going to put together? All of those things come together to really move us towards accomplishing that really high goal that we have for our lives and for our families. And so this is, and then the last piece, and you'll see this in the picture, you can see this, and it's a rubber mallet. And the label on that says resources. So we have all these pieces. We have the foundation. We have the support beam. We have the roof. But how are we going to actually put this together? How are we going to do this? How are we going to put this house together? And it's the resources that we have available in money, in skills, and in assets. What are those things that we can use to really start putting this house together? And I want us to think really big and think really creatively, right side of the law, but creatively on how we can amass the appropriate amount of funds and resources and assets to make these things work and make these things happen. Because that is the tool. Resources, it's just a tool. You can do it to buy ice cream just like you can use those resources to buy a throw pillow for your couch. You can use them to purchase a home just like you can use it to take an extravagant year-long vacation for you and your family, cruising around the world. They're resources to accomplish something. It is a tool. It is something that you use to do something different or meaningful or fun or necessary with. So what are those resources that you can use? What are the things that are obvious? What are those things that are right here? It's our paycheck, right? What are the things that we need to develop on? Our skills that we can flip those and leverage those into a better working situation, a better paying job, moving to a different city that has more opportunities for us. If we are trying to do really, really big things, where do we need to be to do that? If it's a specific place, move to that place. If it's just a specific industry, be a part of that industry. If it is knowing the specific people, then find a reasonable and honorable and meaningful way to put yourself in the same location, the same environment as those people. Do what you need to do to accomplish that goal. Because if it was meaningful enough for you to write it down as a goal, it's meaningful enough for you and me, frankly, to work towards making that goal happen in a reality in our lives. So those resources, what are those things that are obvious? What are those things that are a little bit more creative? What are those things that seem like, man, that's going to take a long time to do it? Well, it's going to take the same amount of time if you don't do it. So figure it out, reach for it, make it happen, and strive to do really, really good, fun things with your money. And live an amazing life and be financially stable, financially sound, and not just that, but financially thriving for you and for your family. Because if you can do it, somebody else will see that you did it and they will strive for that same goal as well. Because if somebody accomplished it, that means it's worth doing and it means it can be done. So that's our financial house. That's how I got started in this many, many years ago. And it still rings true today. There's still the same tenets that I believe in. I just take those tenets into the small business world, and those are the exact same things. What are we saving for as a business? What are we investing in as a business? What's our credit or debt situation? How are we funding this? What's our spending plan? And what are those really big, hairy goals that we plan on going for as a business? But what does that mean for your personal finance, right? What sort of personal resources are going to be using to do this until our business is sustainable? So I take all those same tenets and I just put them in a different container, a different environment, and they still work the same way. They're tried and they are true. So that's all I have for you all today. I hope you enjoyed the house. I wouldn't recommend anybody trying to live in this house, like I said, but in a pinch, you can use a flat roof with 4 walls and and a floor if you need to. But that's all I have for you today. As I said, my name is Katrina Pitts at Studio and Financial Coach to Small Business Owners, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode of More Minutes. And I'm super grateful for a new year, and I'm really grateful that you all are coming along with me to see us do really fun things as a business, but also our engagement, our community at large. And so you'll hear more from us as in the weeks to come. And again, hope you enjoyed it, and thank you so much for listening. I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week, and we will talk to you soon. Until we meet, keep working on the change.